Dexter Resurrection was exactly what this franchise needed. New city, evolved Dexter, Harrison with actual weight to his arc, Peter Dinklage and Uma Thurman as villains nobody saw coming. The season pulled 3.1 million global viewers in its first 3 days, the biggest Showtime premiere ever, and it got renewed for season 2 of October 2025, and the filming starts in April 13th of 2026. And it still made one mistake that fans haven't forgotten 6 months later, and not a small one either. The kind where you look back at the setup, see exactly how much potential was sitting right there, and feel the sting of what could have been. The kind of mistake that a strong season 2 absolutely has to correct, not just for the fans, but because the story demands it. That mistake has a name, Angel Batista, and the way Resurrection used him, specifically the way it dismantled his reputation on the way out, is the one genuine wound the season left open. Here's why it matters, why it went wrong, and exactly what season 2 needs to do to make it right. The biggest mistake Resurrection made was not killing Batista, it was systematically destroying his credibility in the episodes leading up to his death, turning one of the franchise's most beloved characters into someone who read as unhinged before Predator's bullet finished the job. When Zayas returns as Batista, the setup was genuinely thrilling. For decades, Batista was the emotional heart of Miami Metro, the guy with the big laugh, the hats, the unshakable sense of justice. Not Dokes, all muscle and aggression, not LaGuerta, operating from ambition. Batista was the one who believed in doing the right thing every single time. When Angela Bishop's call in New Blood's finale planted the seed that Dexter was the real Bay Harbor Butcher, his decision to pursue it felt completely earned. He tracked Dexter from Iron Lake to New York. He set up a hotel room wallpapered with maps, photographs, Dexter's mugshot, and meticulous records of every address he could document. He planted an AirPod tracker in Dexter's car. He contacted detectives Claudette Wallace and Melvin Olivia directly with his suspicions. By the midpoint of the season, he was the most dangerous law enforcement presence this franchise had produced since Frank Lundy. Then, the show started walking it back. Dexter got to Wallace first, framing Batista as a retired cop with an unhealthy obsession, a man who had gone off the deep end chasing a cold case. Wallace, a sharp detective, chose to believe the man her own department had zero information on over a 30-year law enforcement veteran. Then, in episode 8, Batista walked directly into Predator's door and told him everything about Dexter. Alone, no backup, no official sanction. A veteran captain who spent decades watching what happens when people get too close to dangerous men without support just handed a serial killer obsessive the most valuable information in New York. By the time he ended up on Predator's kill table in episode 9, the NYPD wasn't looking at a tragic investigator who got outmaneuvered. They were looking at someone Wallace had already mentally filed under unreliable. Predator shot him 5 times in the back. His final words, "Dexter Morgan, fuck you," were raw and exactly right. Zayas delivered them with everything the moment deserved. That part landed. So like I said, the problem wasn't the death. The problem was what happened to his reputation getting there. Compare Batista's arc to Dokes and LaGuerta. Dokes pursued Dexter relentlessly through season 2 of the original series and never once looked irrational. LaGuerta built a case from almost nothing in season 7 and died looking like the smartest person in the room. Neither was made to look incompetent in their colleagues' eyes before the show killed them. Batista got a different treatment. Retirement framed him as impulsive. The investigation was conducted entirely alone, his credibility actively torpedoed by the man he was hunting. Collider's post-renewal piece said it plainly. The biggest mistake Resurrection made wasn't killing Batista. It was making him look like he had lost his mind before it happened. The death was always coming. There was genuinely no other exit for a character this locked into Dexter's orbit who would never stop. But a character who spent 19 years representing integrity and justice deserved to go out with that reputation intact in the eyes of every person around him. Instead, he died looking obsessed to the very people he was trying to convince. That's the wound season 2 inherits. And the reason that wound cuts so deep comes down to one decision Resurrection made in episode 3 that still has fans furious. A scene that lasted less than 5 minutes and set up a problem the show never fixed. Subscribe right now because the next section is about 2 characters who appeared in that exact episode, got the setup of a lifetime handed to them, and then vanished for the rest of the season while the man they loved most died alone in a stranger's vault. Resurrection's failure to bring Joey Quinn and Vince Masuka into Batista's investigation wasn't just a missed fan service opportunity. It was a structural mistake that made Batista's arc weaker. his death more isolated, and his legacy more hollow than it had any right to be. In episode 3, Backseat Driver, Batista sat down with Quinn and Masuka at a Miami bar to announce his retirement. Quinn, now a lieutenant at Miami Metro, and Masuka, still the franchise's sharpest forensic specialist, were right there in front of him. It was the first time either had appeared in the franchise since the 2013 finale, over 12 years earlier. The scene was warm, funny, and loaded with history. Batista told them nothing. He couldn't answer why he was leaving. They accepted it. Quinn expressed mild confusion, Masuka did his thing, and that was it. Two men with every personal reason in the world to want answers about Dexter Morgan. Quinn, whose entire relationship with Deb was destroyed by the gravitational pull of Dexter's secret. Masuka, who had spent decades as Dexter's closest forensic colleague, were handed a perfect setup and then written off the season entirely. Screen Rant noted at the time that Quinn from the original series would have pushed harder, would have questioned the retirement, and almost certainly would have tagged along had he known the real reason. Quinn has a history with it. He spent a significant portion of season 5 convinced Dexter was hiding something, and he was right. The moment Batista told him Dexter was alive and in New York, Quinn would have not stayed in Miami. The same goes for Masuka, who had decades of proximity to Dexter's work and the forensic background to connect dots nobody else could. Instead, Batista went alone, and by going alone, the show eliminated the one structural safeguard that could have kept his investigation alive after his death. When Dokes died, his investigation died with him because nobody else knew what he knew. The same thing happened with LaGuerta. The case went cold until new evidence surfaced years later. Batista repeated the exact same pattern, and the show knew it. Screen Rant flagged this as early as episode 4, pointing out that by not telling anyone in Miami what he was doing, Batista was leaving himself wide open to having the investigation closed the moment something happened to him. And something did happen to him. And now the Bay Harbor Butcher case, the real one, the one with Dexter's name on it, has no active investigator in Miami who knows the truth. The voicemail Quinn left on Batista's phone, the one Dexter heard while trapped in Prater's vault in the finale, is the clearest signal the show dropped about where this is going. Dexter heard it, and his internal monologue said 3 words: "I missed them." That wasn't nostalgia, that was a setup. Quinn's call revealed he knew Batista was in New York, chasing something. Now, Batista is dead. His hotel room full of evidence is sitting untouched, and Quinn is in Miami with enough threads to pull the whole thing open if he chooses to follow them. Quinn and Masuka's episode 3 cameo was not fan service. It was a foundation that Resurrection built and then never stood on. The show gave itself the perfect mechanism to keep Batista's legacy alive through people who loved him, had personal stakes in finding out what happened, and had the institutional weight to do something about it. Then it walked away from all 3 of them at once. The death, the isolation, the dismantled credibility. All of it connects to one central problem the show has been circling since New Blood, and season 2 has a direct path to correcting it, but only if the writers understand exactly what went wrong and why it can't happen the same way twice. Now, drop a comment right now. Do you think that Quinn comes to New York in season 2? Or does the show leave Batista's death unresolved and move on? Because what happens next with that hotel room full of evidence is going to tell us everything about whether the show has learned its lesson. Season 2 of Resurrection has everything it needs to correct season 1's mistake. Batista's hotel room, Quinn's voicemail, Masuka's forensic expertise, and Wallace's active Bay Harbor Butcher investigation. But the fix only works if Batista is treated as a credible investigator who got outplayed, not a cautionary tale about obsession. Batista's hotel room is still rented under his name, the wall covered in maps, photos, Dexter's mugshot, and documented movements is sitting in a New York City hotel room waiting for someone to find it. Dexter Daily reported in September 2025 that Dexter grabbed Batista's phone from the scene and used facial recognition to unlock it, but the hotel room itself remains untouched, a ticking clock of physical evidence that directly connects Dexter Morgan to the Bay Harbor Butcher case and to Batista's death. The moment Quinn learns Batista is dead in New York, the first thing he does is look for what Angel was working on. The room is right there. Meanwhile, Wallace ended season 1 with more active leads than any law enforcement figure in the franchise has ever held going into a new chapter. She has the New York Ripper file with Don Framp's name on it, confirmed by showrunner Clyde Phillips on the Dark Passengers podcast in November 2025 to appear on screen for the first time in season 2. She has the hooked rod murder weapon that her partner Olivia found in Prater's vault. She has Batista's body in that same vault, and she knows Batista was actively pursuing the Bay Harbor Butcher case before he died. And she has the Bay Harbor Butcher case itself, which is technically still open, with Batista having come to New York specifically to pursue it. On the production side, Michael C. Hall confirmed in a Screen Rant interview that he is actively working to bring back a new version of the original morning routine intro for Season 2, the iconic sequence that both New Blood and Original Sin recreated, that Resurrection notably skipped in Season 1. That's not a cosmetic detail. That's Hall signaling that Season 2 is leaning harder into the connective tissue between this chapter and the original series. The intro was always the show's way of saying, this is who Dexter Morgan is, stripped of everything else. Bringing it back in Season 2 means the show is ready to plant its flag more firmly. The framework for fixing the Batista problem is already in the text. Quinn comes to New York because his friend is dead and nobody has satisfying answers. He finds the hotel room, he finds the evidence wall, and for the first time in franchise history, the investigation into Dexter Morgan doesn't die with the investigator who built it. It gets handed forward to someone else who loved that investigator and has every reason to finish the job. That's how you honor Batista's legacy, not by treating his death as the closing of a chapter, but by treating it as the opening of the next one. Masuka coming along gives the investigation forensic credibility and provides the show with its tonal release valve, the same function he served in the original series for 8 years. His presence also creates a genuinely interesting dramatic possibility. What does Masuka do when he finally, undeniably, has to accept that the man he worked next to for decades was the Bay Harbor Butcher all along? That's a character reckoning the franchise has never actually committed to, and Season 2 is the place to do it. The only version of this that fails is the one where Resurrection treats Batista's death the way it treated Dokes and LaGuerta's, as a closed file, mourned briefly, and then moved past. Quinn calls Batista's phone in the finale. Wallace has the Ripper file and the open Butcher case. The hotel room is sitting there. The show laid these tracks deliberately. Season 2 has no excuse not to run on them. Season 2 of Resurrection was always going to be measured against what it did with the wreckage of Season 1's emotional climax. Batista's death was the season's most powerful moment. His diminished reputation in the lead up to it was its most significant mistake. Season 2 can correct that mistake by letting Quinn and Masuka pick up what Batista was carrying, and by letting the show finally ask what happens when the Bay Harbor Butcher case doesn't just die with the person who built it. Filming starts on April 13th of 2026. The target release is October of 2026, and the writer's room has been active since August of 2025. They know what they left on the table. Resurrection Season 1 was the best version of this franchise since the original show's peak years. The New York setting worked. Leon Prater was a genuinely dangerous villain. The serial killer club concept gave the season a texture nobody expected. The Batista reunion delivered everything New Blood failed to provide. And the finale's closing monologue, Dexter on a stolen yacht with a list of targets and "My urges are evolving," sets up Season 2 as the most interesting chapter this franchise has ever had in front of it. But Batista deserved better than what he got on his way out. A 19-year character, the franchise's moral backbone, the last major original cast member still standing. He deserved to die with his credibility intact, with colleagues who knew what he was doing and why, and with an investigation that survived him. He got none of that. He got a death that was powerful in the moment and hollow in the architecture surrounding it. But Season 2 can fix it. Quinn and Masuka are already in position. The hotel room is still there. Wallace is actively working cases that overlap with everything Batista was building. The Bay Harbor Butcher file is open, and Dexter is on a yacht with "I missed them" echoing in the back of his head. The one mistake Resurrection made is also its clearest setup for what comes next. The show built the problem. Now it has to decide whether it's willing to fully commit to solving it, not just for the fans who love Batista for 2 decades, but for a story that has been asking the same question since 2006 and still hasn't given a real answer. What happens when the person who knows the truth refuses to stay dead? Once again, filming starts on April 13th and October 2026 is the target release date. That answer is coming. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next in-depth analysis.